My speech during the debate and my very strong view, and I've had many emails and letters from constituents on this, is I would not vote for us putting boots on the ground, our men and women actually of our armed forces being inside of Syria. Nor would I vote for regime change or nation building. We've learned the lessons of the difficult lessons of Iraq and of course Afghanistan was that not even the most powerful country in the world has the capacity to nation build. It's far too painful, and it really should be left up to those countries, those populations, to do that for themselves. Nor would there, I think, be any support from my constituents for voting for having our troops on the ground in Syria. But the important thing I felt was that when someone like Bashar al-Assad uses these chemical weapons, uses sarin or mustard gas against his own people, there needs to be a response. And the reason for that is 100 years ago, the world came together and decided that those sort of weapons will be prohibited. They will not be allowed to be used. And if we stand by and allow him to flaunt that and allow him to cross that line, then the consequences, I think, are much bigger and far more difficult to deal with. We saw that in Iraq. In 1988, Saddam Hussein gassed the Kurdish population. 5,000 Kurds died in Halabja. The world looked on in horror, but turned the other way. And of course, that encouraged him to go further, and then he invaded Kuwait, but also encouraged Assad Sr., because when he saw his old Ba'athist friend next door getting away with gassing his own people, he started manufacturing and hoarding these dreadful chemical weapons. And so, the idea that the international community can stand aside from this and look the other way, I think, is a misguided one. It's absolutely the wrong thing to do, because it will come back and haunt us. I've recently visited one of the refugee camps. In fact, on the Kurdish side of the border, the Kurdish regional government has had 200,000 Syrian refugees come across the border. Now, when you visit those camps, you realize that just the harrowing conditions that these people have had to endure. One, to get over the border, but then also in the camps themselves, albeit, I was very proud that the United Kingdom was actually the second largest donor to the aid effort for the Syrian refugees through UNHCR and through our aid agencies. I saw the work of the International Rescue Committee, which I'm deeply involved with, and the fantastic work they're doing with displaced people. The one thing that you learn very quickly is this is a deeply complex situation, and we absolutely should not get involved in solving the political problems for the Syrian people. They need to solve them themselves. They need to get round the table and solve them. And in fact, what the Prime Minister was saying is you will not get Bashar al-Assad around a table until he feels fear, until he feels that he cannot do these things. He cannot gas his people and get away with it. But the other complexity is, there are lots of bad guys on all sides. So, some of the refugees I was meeting weren't fleeing Assad's forces. They were fleeing the Ansar al-Sunnah, this Al-Qaeda-linked group that had issued a fatwa to execute Kurds and Christians inside Syria. So we have to be very careful, which is why I wanted to support this first motion, but then make sure that whatever we do is actually well-defined, limited, and targeted at taking out the nerve agent and saving the innocent lives, the innocent people who are caught up in all this, but not, and I repeat, not getting involved in nation building or regime changing inside Syria. It is a deeply complex issue, and it's, when you see the sort of human tragedy unraveling there, it really is hard to stand by and say, we won't do anything, we won't act. I have to say again to you, I was very proud of the British contribution to the aid effort. I think we are doing our country proud to be the second largest contributor. I think we're delivering something like 285,000 meals, food and water a week to the refugees there, which is remarkable. There needs to be a political solution to end the conflict, but that political solution has to come from the Syrian people themselves. Both sides need to be ready to negotiate a settlement. But I think you need to sort of separate out, because you can conflate these things, as many people have done in the media and, in fact, in the debate last week. You need to separate out, as John Major did in '91, the political settlement needs to be left up to the main characters in that theatre of war. But what you've got to do is say nobody will be allowed to use chemical weapons, and we will act if a party in that war is using chemical weapons. And we know that Assad used chemical weapons. Therefore, it is absolutely right that we must act against that. But the two things aren't linked. You absolutely can act to make sure that you send a clear message to Assad and to other dictators thinking about. I mean, imagine what countries like Iran will be thinking, or North Korea, if you don't act. The whole world, our value system operates on deterrence, whether it be nuclear deterrence or chemical deterrence, and that is something that we should address. The international community must address, and I think it's right for my Prime Minister to continue to push hard to say that there needs to be a response to this, because not acting has its own consequences. But separate to that, you do need to have a political solution. There needs to be a way forward for that. But that's up to the Syrian people first and foremost. Of course, the international community can help. You can make sure that the Russians play their part in that, or the Chinese, or indeed the Iranians. But that should be independent of us taking action against a clear flouting of international conventions.